CN Rail reported its results after the bell yesterday, and as it did so, like other businesses, it said because of the uncertainty thanks to COVID-19, it is withdrawing its forecast for this year, as well as putting a pin in its 3-year targets that it had previously announced. President and CEO JJ Ruest joins us now. Thank you very much for being with us, JJ. And I guess I want to start by asking, because you have such a finger on the pulse of what's moving and what's happening, for an overview of the business as you see it at the moment. What does it look like, and how would you gauge it compared to what we would call a normal economy?
Yeah, so solid performance in the first quarter, which was a story of first a month-long blockade, First Nation blockade on the railroads, and after that, the last 2 weeks of March was really, start to be hit by the pandemic. Where we are right now in April, I think we're at April 27 was the closing last night. So we're about 19% below last year revenue-wise. Most commodities, most market are down. The big down market is automotive. Just about all of our manufacturers of assembly line North America are closed. It's down 90% year over year. In other words, the diesel lot is full, and there's no point making Finity vehicle for the next couple of weeks. After that, lumber is also very weak. Housing start is down. Obviously, people are not being allowed to really do residential construction. And then the energy space is also quite slow, and will probably get worse before it gets better. On the positive side, Canadian grain very solid. Canadian coal, thermal coal and met coal solid. Anything has to do with the Port of Prince Rupert, whether container-wise or export of propane, is also solid. And everything else in between is sort of slightly negative. And I think at this point, we believe that in the month of May, we must be fairly close to the bottom. We think the month of May will be the bottom. And after that, we'll see in June how the recovery come back, whether it's a V or U or a slow L on the way up.
I was very intrigued to see that you think May will be the bottom, and that beyond that it'll get better. What do you rely upon to make that forecast? What is it that makes you say that?
So we run numbers every day, and we run numbers every day also for the last rolling 7 days. And we follow all of our market. We have roughly 150 customers at CN that represent 80% of our revenue. But the top 25, I would say, are really the lead indicator. And as I said, the automotive industry decided to take a hard stop. So it doesn't really get worse than what it is today, because today we're 90% below last year revenue-wise. So when these plants start to restart sometime in June or July, but they will restart, then it's one of the companies that'll be on the way back up. So depending on some of these commodities, some like pulp mills still produce, obviously. Specialty pulp is one of the ingredients that you need to make these masks, and people have been buying towels and like never before. But when we look at these different commodities, we think we're fairly close to the bottom, especially when we hear the different provinces in Canada and some of the states in the U.S. are talking about slowly reopening the economy, which eventually means in a couple of weeks, some of these markets will really hit bottom and then eventually slowly come back up. But I think it's really a time also where Canadians and Americans have to start to take their future in our own hand. And we can't really rely just on the government for them to figure this out, how we're going to return, make the economy back on its feet and do this safely. I think all of us have a role to play now as to how we pivot, how we enable the economy and trade again, and do this safely over a couple of weeks, couple of months, probably a couple of months. But we shouldn't be waiting always for the government to give us all the answers.
What do you mean by that? Do you mean individuals or businesses? What can they do absent kind of government permission?
Businesses, like I give you the example of CN, we never slowed down for the pandemic. Our 20,000 people in operation have showed up to work every day. Everybody's coming to work. We provide them a safe environment. We clean locomotive, we clean cranes, we clean tool every day. We clean bunkhouse where the crew stays overnight before coming back home. We apply social distancing. We are going to be, as of the 1st of May, apply mandatory face mask in all of our place of work. Our office people are working from home. Eventually, I'm sure we'll find a way to create an environment for some of them to start to come back at work. So I think business have a role an obligation to find a way to create a working environment that's safe, but where people can go back to work and earn their paycheck, making something productive, making goods, providing services. And at home, my family, your family, we too have a role to play as to how we keep ourselves safe, but at the same time start to be productive again as a country. We can't just be for months and months depending on government printing money, having people stay in house.
We did have Ontario lay out a framework. We expect the federal government to follow it. That's very much dependent on what happens with the pandemic, but very unspecific, JJ, on dates for reopen, on types of businesses, on how they might reopen. Do you think they could be doing more to be clear about the path forward?
No, I think they're providing the right signal. Like earlier this week, you had province which have lower population, like New Brunswick and in Saskatchewan, talking about how they're slowly recover first. It's easier probably like in the case of CN, when you look at Northern Quebec or Saskatchewan, for example, the population and the number of cases have been less, so therefore they should be in better position to restart early their economy, whether it's mining, agriculture, pulp mill, and whatnot, because it's not the issue there is not as significant as it is in Quebec, Ontario, Michigan, and Illinois. The bigger issue would be in the bigger city. But I think there has to be a way to do this properly over time, starting where places where it's actually probably easier to do it, probably the more part of the country where there is less population. And probably the toughest part will be downtown Toronto, downtown Chicago, downtown Montreal, and this will probably be maybe the last piece of the economy that could resume. But I think government provides signal, but business people and citizens, in the end, I don't want the need to take this in their hand and find a way to do this properly and listen to all of the advice, but turn the advice into pragmatic solution.
I want to ask you, obviously energy has been badly hit and storage is one of the key issues here. How has that affected rail, energy by rail for you? What does that look like and what's your expectation of where it goes?
Yeah, so energy was a good segment for us in the first quarter. In the second quarter, it will not. Already, energy for us as we speak in April here is already down, quite a number of factors. We think the crude that we move and the one which is undiluted, the heavy, which is the safest grade, will continue to move by rail. It's about 50,000 barrels a day, and it will stay at that. I think that's sustainable, but I really don't see that coming back before the price of crude start to make sense for people, for oil companies, for them to be worth making. I think if your question was about are we going to be storing crude on railroad, CN is not going to do that. Mm-hmm. Storage of crude needs to be done in storage tank farm, not in rail cars. We move it, but we don't store it. So this is not a business for the rail industry.
When we talked last, the blockades had ended. You were working through a backlog. You were very clear that the stoppages caused by those blockades build up over time, not unlike the strikes, that it takes time to recover. How long a recovery, when you say auto's down 90%, but that they'll restart, hopefully in June, how many weeks or months does it take you to get back to normal?
Yeah, so the blockade was really done by the end of February, and by the end of March, we were really current. The only thing really and some of the longer lead item that took more time to get current was grain on the country, and coal, mm-hmm. stockpile of clean coal out of the mine. I think by and large, this was done by the end of March, and definitely today we are current. My comment about the automotive is that automotive has been current. Automotive has been producing more vehicle than people buy, and when the pandemics came in, people stopped buying, and therefore there's no place for that market to go. There's no point producing it at this point. You got to wait for economy and people get out of their house and consume again.
All right. We are going to take a break here, JJ. Thank you very much. We're going to ask you to sit tight because we're going to come back. JJ Ruest is President and CEO of CN Rail.